All right, everybody, welcome back to the Recruiting Community Podcast. We do this weekly, where we meet with TA leaders, kind of talk about what's top of mind for them. We try to do it in a conversation format. I'm scared of outlines, so this makes it work pretty easily for us. But we happen to be in a slightly different location. We're at Unleash this year. We've set up, Shaker has been kind enough to sponsor a place where we can kind of sit and grab some TA leaders that we know, that we love, that we respect. And we really want to hear their opinion on some things. I've got Shelia Gray with me, who's sat here. Shelia, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? I've got questions.
Okay.
But I want to talk about what's going on in your head and your space and what you're seeing. Introduce yourself. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Shelia Gray, and I'm a recruitment architect. I've spent probably the last 10 to 15 years building talent acquisition COEs for global companies. So I walk into organizations, and whatever state they're in, I've got to analyze what's going on and then figure out how they can best use talent acquisition to meet their business strategy. So I love what I do.
Well, I have to tell you, you are one of my favorite TA leaders. You are a no-nonsense. Like if you were to walk the floor with Shelia and listen to her talk with some of these vendors, and it's not in a bad way, but it's kind of like that doesn't make sense.
No.
Like, very, very to the point.
No.
Here's what I'm trying to solve. That doesn't work.
Yes, correct.
So your take, we don't have to name any names here, but like your take of what you're seeing on the floor from an AI claims or an AI delivery, or because that every AI this, AI that, agentic this, agentic that. What's your take so far?
What I'm going to say is, because I've been to this conference 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
4 years. What I'm going to say is the space is incredible this year because it comes to AI. Because I felt like last year there were more programs around wellness than anything else.
Did notice
there were a lot
that.
of
Yeah,
wellness.
it did seem like that.
I think after COVID, wellness became a focus, so there were more programs. This year is more things about AI, or every firm trying to show me how they've integrated AI as if that's my most critical thing.
Yeah.
I mean, things that I didn't even expect AI to be in, and even firms when I looked to who talked about they had voice to AI. Voice to AI.
Okay.
I was like, oh my gosh, it's in everything. So that piece is good. I think people are talking about the next generation, which is the generative AI.
Yeah.
Whereas last year they were just talking about AI.
Yep.
The question is, like they say, the tool in the wrong hands never gets used well. So I think in some respects, when I've talked to a lot of people here, they don't know how to use this. So the session I just attended, we were talking about recruiting tools. I think it's very important because I always say to my team, don't get caught up in the shiny objects.
Yeah.
Right? Because shiny objects are those people who bombard you with the next great thing, but if they're not solving for a problem, it doesn't work. So anytime someone calls me or contacts me, the first thing I say is, what are you trying to solve for me? And if they don't understand TA well enough to be able to answer that question, then I know they're probably can't be a partner.
Yeah.
They're a vendor, but not a partner. And a partner makes you better than who you are.
Yeah.
And that's why you spend money.
Well, and it's an interesting call. As you're talking about that, I'm just thinking like some of these tools are incredible.
Yes.
But they're not going to be a solution for every TA team.
No.
And so I think the magic is if you can figure out how to have that conversation directly with these vendors to determine, are you solving a problem that I have? Or are you maybe 5 years ahead of me? Are you maybe I'm not there. I don't have that problem yet.
And I think if I were a vendor, I would have very clear marketing of what problem I solve.
Yeah.
What is my ideal customer base? Because some of these are for standalone small companies because of their pricing model and what they deliver. If I'm global, right? So can I be whatever? I would do stuff to focus in on that because of a woman. For example, one of the things that I have started to do, because my company does a lot of manufacturing, is put in assessments to do real job previews, right?
Okay, yeah.
Those are expensive. I met a vendor here who can just video realistic job previews, make them available for recruiters to send out to candidates as a part of the sourcing for us to put on our career website saying the day of whatever. That is more cost effective if I was a company that didn't have a lot of money. Yeah. And I was like, that's the first thing you should present. I'm an all-in-one solution at this price point for companies like this. And so that's what I don't get. It's like they have all this other stuff that's cute, and I think marketing does it, but they don't understand that the buyers in the HR space only have a limited amount of money that gets cut all the time, so you got to say how you add value.
Little bit of forest in the trees, everything. Yeah. Well, okay, so let me ask you, is there a tactical shift you think people are sort of underestimating right now? It doesn't have to be AI related, but with all the things leaders are dealing with right now, do you think there's something that's truly tactical that is a little bit of a miss amongst your peers?
I haven't made up my mind, but there was a shift for us to do skills.
Oh, yeah.
Shift to shift. Now, Josh just went in there and blew that up. So Josh Bersin in his thing today was saying, will skills be the priority that we need?
Yeah.
Because given the AI stuff that's coming out, will that take away some of the skill pieces? That's the piece, because I don't think we all got, okay, in many of my companies, it's hard to get them to think about competencies, much less competencies translating skills, much less validating skills. So we're so far back on the evolution. If this hits, then we'll throw it up. It'll be gone.
That's a good point.
So I think that is one of the biggest shifts. Will skills be as important?
Yeah. Well, I think it is fascinating because we are seeing a couple of tools here and there that are kind of flipping that.
Yes.
Kind of flipping that on its ear.
Yes. And I was surprised. He said he wasn't bought into it. And now he thinks, yeah.
All right. So I have another question for you. Let's shift a little bit. Let's shift gears. Talent attraction strategy. So within the work that you do, have you changed your approach or delivery from a talent attraction standpoint here recently, or do you have plans to kind of pivot that?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. I believe there are ebbs and flows in recruiting. Yeah. There are times when companies are in control.
Okay.
So we are the buyer and we can dictate. And there are times when candidates are in control. So candidates were in control right after COVID.
Sure.
Because they knew that working at home works for some people. They saw how companies respected them for the time commitment and the work-life balance. They cared about their mental health and all of that. So what I've seen is candidates are demanding more. They're more educated when they change jobs. You know, they want to know about the wellness phone. They want to know commitment to work-life balance. Okay. They want to know about the work location. Is it hybrid or work? They're much more educated because they experience things in a closed environment. So I think to do attraction today, it's a couple of things. I think we have to sell more than just the job. And that's what we've used to do, just sell the job.
Yeah.
I think now you have to sell people on why me? Because there are a lot of jobs. Why me? And how are you different?
So the differentiator of your company, your organization.
The culture, the people, the learning and development, the growth. I think people are asking those questions more than about the job.
Okay. Do you think that power shift, because it seems to me, I agree with you, I do think that is a back and forth, kind of an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
While historically, I do believe the employers have held all the cards.
Okay.
I think with technology, right, and you're right, I think right after the pandemic, but then I think slowly the employers were back into control for a bit. And now with automation and all these crazy tools for applying and interviewing and that are at the hands of the candidates, I think it swings back where they get a little more and they can be a little more demanding of the employers. So tell me more about that.
I think candidates can be more demanding of employees because they have more access of information about the employer.
Yeah.
I do believe that. But what I'm going to say is something that I saw slowly has become quickly, which is the EVP, the employment brand. Why work here? Why stay here?
Yeah.
So when I did one of the CareerXroads meetings, I'm thinking it was 2008, around that time, we did it at United Way in Atlanta.
Okay.
And I met my first employment branding person.
Okay.
Right? And at that time, she was doing Yum Brands and whatever.
All right.
And we were all amazed. What's an employment branding person? Why is it important or whatever?
How's that a whole job?
Why is that a whole job? And I'm going to tell you, most of my peers have someone focused just on the brand.
Sure.
That's the candidate engagement. That's trying to control the narrative, because I remember back in those days, Bank of America said, if you don't create a brand for yourself, people will make one up for you, right?
Yeah.
And your narrative will be based on your Glassdoor results, the last employee that left you,
sure,
the last layoff you did or whatever. And so I think that we are all trying to do more narratives around why us. And I think candidates are looking at that. And I don't believe that it's back in our ballpark anymore, because I believe that the critical skills we need are not looking for jobs. People, because here's the deal. People have changed their opinion about what's valuable. If I was sitting with someone this morning and she said, I was able to move to Vancouver. My company lets me play as hard as I work. And I said, is the compensation the best in the market? And she said, no. But I'm willing to get those people, right? Whereas we thought that was the only motivator. Those things matter to her now. So I think our AVP has to reflect while we are meeting you where you need to be.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think that, and I'll be really honest and be a little vulnerable here. I think a truly level playing field makes a lot of TA teams nervous.
It does.
To not have the upper hand in the deal, to not have the upper hand in the message.
Well, but here's what I'm going to say. It was 3 years ago when the tech companies that had never laid off before, right?
Yes.
That was the Googles, the Facebooks, all those. The way you did it makes a difference. I worked at Sun Microsystems back in the 2000s. We did everything. We made laying off a sacrifice. So we cut costs. We asked for employee suggestions and everything. So by the time, and we did training of all the managers for how to do the layoff. Then we did training for them on how to talk to their teams after the people left. Then we figured out the day to have it on. Then we figured out, are we going to make people have a bum's rush to leave? Or we're going to put them, we decided to get cabs in case they were so emotional they couldn't drive. Yeah. We figured it all out. Our CEO said the day after the layoff, he got letters from people saying the way they were treated and how they did that made them respect Sun Microsystems. Okay? Yeah. Now, let's fast forward to what we did 2 years ago. Emails, CEOs going on video calls, saying, sorry I had to do this, I made some mistakes. I never get them. The Peloton was one I saw that was like,
that was tough.
It was cringeworthy.
That was tough.
So as a result, how can you trust? I mean, organizations don't get that those things have a lasting impression. So the safety and security in a lot of those companies is gone. Yeah. You now know it's possible and the way they treat you when it happens.
Yeah. It is interesting because I spoke with a young recruiter a couple of days ago talking about roles that we're starting to see kind of open up.
Yep.
And two of the very high-profile tech companies who had taken part in this really less than ideal way to reduce their workforce. And I mentioned there were some openings, and she said, that's gross. And her opinion was based on the way that they had treated the previous employees, the way that they had reduced that staff.
There are three companies I know about that did layoffs every January so they wouldn't have to pay out bonuses. Mm-hmm. So, and I worked for one of those.
I did too. We called it the Fall Festival.
Yeah, they you had to be on payroll for December 31st to be eligible for the bonus. Got paid out in March. We did the layoff in February. Then by May, I was hiring them back as contractors because you had to wait the 6 months for the tax thing for the layoff, and then I brought them back at a higher salary.
Yeah.
And they did that just so they can make the earnings for that quarter.
So I don't think it's that uncommon.
It's not uncommon, but I just know those companies had it as a strategy, and I said, why would you go there?
So if you're thinking about, let's say you're in an organization that has a less than stellar reputation.
Yes.
Right. In that regard, how are you shifting that from a messaging standpoint and your attraction strategy?
Oh, it's interesting because I worked for a company like that. Horrible LinkedIn. I worked at two companies. Horrible LinkedIn things. Was not willing to change his culture.
Yeah.
And what I said to them is, you're going to have to be real. So when we do our employment branding, you can't downplay who you are, but you got to upplay why people stay here.
There you go. All right.
You got to upplay, because some people stayed there. Yep. Some people said, I have grit. It's in my community. That's why I'm there.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm making a difference. One company, there was an environmental thing that happened, and they saw that the company made a difference, and they felt that was something good. So I said, you're going to have to play up that, because let me tell you something. You can't not deny the experience people have with poor leadership, less than market compensation, opportunity not being real. So those can't be talking points. That is the reality, but it can't be talking points.
Well, and I got to be honest with you. I mean, that culture is going to appeal to somebody. Right, so it's going to appeal to somebody, but here's the deal: is if somebody's going to appeal with someone who will stay long term to take that organization to the next level. Yeah, and that's for me the butts and seats, and then the next leaders. And I had a leader years ago that said to me, "A C player doesn't know an A player when they see it, but they're intimidated if they feel it. Whereas A players want to be challenged." Yeah.
They want the organization. They want to be number one. They have a hunger for it.
Push me.
But it'll be frustrating for them because those people will take them out of their comfort zone. But they said, but that's the company I want to work for.
Yeah.
Because they will do that. Because you don't always have to like the people you work with, but you have to respect them and you have to trust them.
Well, it's huge.
So I've worked for some companies where my senior leaders were horrible, but I thought they were brilliant. And I thought that they were good to their people. And that was worth staying around for.
I love it.
Yeah.
Look, Shelia, we ask everybody, you've been on the show before, we ask everybody as we wrap up, if you were going to write a book about the state of things today, what would the title of your book be?
I guess my first thought was live through it.
live through it. All right.
I feel like but I planned for it in the fact that I knew that there was a possibility or scenario where our 4 years was going to be an era that HR and TA had never seen before.
Yeah.
And because it's so chaotic, so if there's change, and I love change, and I do change.
Yeah.
But if it's chaotic and it changes every day, it's hard to plan.
Uh-huh.
And in TA, most of our stuff is built around planning, headcount planning,
Sure.
resource planning, everything. It's about it. So what I'm going to say is you got to live through it. So you got to think about what's going to happen on the opposite side. You got to think about how you prepare your team for it. And you got to understand that your leadership is in an era that they've never been in before. Because I will say, unfortunately, most CFOs I've met are bean counters instead of strategic financial planners. So they don't think about scenarios for this, and this. They think about, oh my gosh, we're going to hit a rough bump. Okay, let's cut costs. Let's do this. They're very reactionary.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say you need to live through it, because if this is your work, this is your passion, this is what you want to do, you got to see on the other side of that, you got to be optimistic. And everyone around you that you lead or around, you got to help them think through it.
I love it.
So live through it.
Okay. Well, and who gets the first signed copy?
Oh God, I've lived through it. Okay, I'm going to give props out. I had an early manager who I still today, and he probably doesn't even know it, was one of the best managers I had because he fought for the function.
Okay. You want to name him?
Yeah. His name was Mark Streifer.
Okay.
Mark Streifer's retired now. He was a mentor. He's the person that made me understand that recruiting was not transactional. He made me do stakeholder analysis, metrics. I never had to do metrics because it was just butts and seats. He took me to a different level of engagement with clients and customers. But it was my first leader I ever saw that fought for the function.
I love it.
And most TA leaders don't fight for functions. They don't.
Yeah. I love it. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us, giving us the time. I know that lots to see, lots to do. I know you're heading out the door. Look, if you want to hear past episodes, you want to see what's coming up on the next episodes, it's CXR.work/podcast. And we're just happy to connect with strong leaders who are willing to come in and just kind of share some behind the scenes and what's going on in their head. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, everybody.